It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I really should sleep, but I don't think I can right now. But anyway, just to wrap up the last 2 weeks, I got some stories to tell I didn't get to before. So just kind of a diary, documentary of kind of just adventures. Let's see, one of the first funny stories, I was at Bondi. I met this German girl. Her name was Louisa. Actually, I'll be keeping in contact with her. Kind of curious to see how her story turns out. But the funny story, a very quick one. That last night before I left Bondi, she and I were up talking till about midnight. And now the thing you must understand about Louisa, she's a 19-year-old German girl with a heavy Eastern German accent. And I convinced her to try talking in an Australian accent. If I could imitate that, I would, but I'll just ask you to try to imagine a heavy Eastern German accent trying to do an Australian accent. It was probably the funniest moments that happened there at Sydney. Another quick story. Everyone kept saying Macca's. I finally realized yesterday, yeah, that Macca's is McDonald's. They don't call it McDonald's, they call it Macca's, Maccas. Also, it's just as terrible as in the US, so don't even bother going. Which leads me to my next story. Australians don't drink coffee per se. Anywhere I went, I get breakfast or whatever, like, hey, can I get a small coffee? They kind of look at me strange and ask, do I want cappuccino, flat white, or a latte? And even some of the commercials, I saw like the business guys, they would order a flat white, so I think that's the closest they come to actual coffee. I did have coffee though when I was in the Outback for morning. We'd have coffee grounds and hot water. Before I forget, another cool story from the world of The Hobbit and the Shire. So there, where they made the movie, there used to be a giant swampy area. So Peter Jackson had the New Zealand Army come and kind of fill it in so they could continue building the set there. And this was for the original Lord of the Rings. Well, in trade-off, the Orc Army, yeah, that's the New Zealand Army. They got to dress up as orcs and fight the Fellowship. So I thought that was kind of cool. I'm not going in any particular order. Another funny story. I mean, maybe not so funny, but last night, at some point, I decided to take off my glasses. I put them in my back pocket, and when I sat down, I split them in half. So one of my new pairs of glasses, I'm gonna have to get replaced, but I do have 2 or 3 extras. So no real big loss there, but just an unfortunate circumstance. Also, it drove me absolutely crazy because people kept talking about sports. They talked about football, talked about rugby, they talked about footy, and I didn't realize that those were all different. And football and rugby clearly are different. Anyway, now that announcement's over. I guess football, they have a sport called football here. They have a sport called footy here, which is like rugby, but different. And then they, of course, have soccer, which they call soccer. I was trying to carry a conversation and said football, meaning soccer, but they were talking about something else, and the conversation just went kind of screwy until a couple days ago, or yesterday, I don't remember, I've lost track of time, but I decided to Google what footy was and realized that was a different sport versus football versus rugby. And speaking of the crazy stuff the Australians do, every bathroom I went to, every toilet I went to, because they use toilet instead of bathroom. Bathroom is where you go wash up, take a bath. But every toilet I went to, every lock was different, and it was just, I don't know, like frustrating, but like a puzzle to figure out every time. Like the way the locking mechanism looked and worked, operated, was completely different. Every bathroom I went to, there's no standardization whatsoever. So again, every time I had to go to the bathroom, it was a little bit of a puzzle. Also, for a while there in Sydney, mainly, I didn't think they knew what a dark beer was. I'd ask for, because I don't recognize any of their beers they had, so I'd try a bunch of different beers, and then I'd ask for a dark beer, because that's kind of what I go to. And they'd give me the darkest they had, and it looked like it was a Corona. It was just completely see-through, light golden colored. Luckily in the Outback, my last night there, they had something a little bit darker, not super dark, and yeah, even in Melbourne, the darkest they had was kind of a light brown. And moving on in the context of alcohol, I haven't verified it, but I'm certain that alcohol by volume is a lot less lighter. It's watered down because the amount I drank there was not worth the amount of money I put into it. And Joshua, I'm talking about water. Don't worry about anything else. But yeah, I'm fairly confident I can outdrink at least both New Zealand and Australia, hands down, and I think every country I've been to. I might have a problem. That, or I just have a ridiculously expensive tolerance. Oh, and totally different topic. On the flight over to China, Guangzhou from Melbourne, they have kind of the movie selection, and they had every Star Wars except Episode 4. So they had Episode 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and Rogue One, but not Episode 4. Like, you're missing one of the most pivotal ones out of that whole kind of genre. And then, of course, talking about movies, my flight here to LA, terribly long, 14 hours, and of course, it was a giant airplane, Airbus, double-decker, lots of space, really comfortable. I mean, I was getting really antsy because I'd just done a 12-hour flight, something like that, to China. Had a 3-hour layover, and then I was jumping on a plane to come here. I was really kind of irritated and tired and didn't want to be on a plane. And then, of course, for some reason, my row and the row in front of me, all our TVs broke, so we couldn't watch anything, any movies or anything. So I just kind of sat there, and luckily I downloaded the movie on Netflix, so I was able to watch that. But yeah, other than that, it was a long flight. And on the topic of flights, when I was checking in this morning to get my tickets, the lady printed out all 3 tickets, flight to China, flight to LA, flight to San Jose, and she was asking me, like, where's San Guaza? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, lady. Yeah, Australian, and I just had no clue what she was saying. So she finally showed me the ticket. She's like, is that in China? I'm like, no, it says San Jose. That's where I live, in California. So that's probably the worst pronunciation I've heard of San Jose ever. And legitimately, about pronunciations, I had a good laugh in the Outback, because afterwards, after our little camping trip, we all went back out to our bar and hung out. And the guide, one of her friends, was there and came in and sat with us. And on the menu, they have quesadillas. Well, the guide's friend legitimately called them quesadillas. Like, that's the way she pronounced them. Like, not even joking, that's what she thought they were called, and I was really tempted to correct her, but then I just kept laughing on the inside. Again, everything about that trip was cool, but there's about 21 of us, all from different parts of the world. I'm the only American. There was 2 Germans, 4 Japanese, 3 Spaniards, actually an Australian couple. But the cool thing was, again, the Spaniards, 2 of them, husband and wife, only spoke Spanish. Actually, the wife spoke a little bit, or French as well, and they had their daughter who was studying in Melbourne.
Smoking is permitted.
So she'd come along as a translator for them on this trip. And, when she disappeared, kind of doing her own thing, the Spanish couple would still want to talk to us, but they didn't speak any English. So between all of us, we all had some sort of broken Spanish. We were all able to communicate with them in some way. Or actually, we had one French girl who would talk to the woman in French as needed. But it was really cool to see everyone from all these different backgrounds, speak different languages, come together and kind of figure out how to communicate, even if they didn't know what the word was in English or whatever language. It was really interesting to see. I mean, not to make light of circumstance, but